Picture this. You're jolted awake every single morning by the ear-splitting roar of an ATV tearing through your private property like it's the Indy 500, and who's behind the wheel? None other than Karen, the neighborhood self-proclaimed sheriff, acting like she's got a divine right to your land. She's waving around HOA rules like they're the Constitution, but here's the kicker. I'm not even part of the HOA. Can you believe the audacity? When I finally decide to turn the tables and catch her red-handed, she flips out, screaming trespassing at me, the guy whose yard she's destroying. What happens next? Oh, just a whirlwind of cops, lawsuits, and ATV catastrophe, and the most unhinged Karen meltdown you'll ever witness. Trust me, you're not ready for how this saga ends, so grab your popcorn. This is about to get absolutely wild. Hey, amazing folks out there. Before we plunge into this crazy tale, can you do me a quick favor? A single click from you could help us hit that magical 1,000 subscriber mark. Smash that subscribe button and join the adventure. All right, let's dive in. The sun's barely peeking over the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. When VRRRRM, the peace is shattered by the obnoxious growl of an ATV. Every single day. It's Karen, the undisputed queen of chaos, tearing across my property on her blindingly neon pink ATV, like she's auditioning for a Mad Max sequel. Does she own my land? Nope. But try telling her that she's too busy acting like the world's her personal racetrack. The first time this happened, I was half asleep, rubbing my eyes, thinking, maybe she took a wrong turn. Maybe there's a logical explanation. But then I saw her zooming through my yard, kicking up clouds of dust, leaving deep, ugly tire tracks in my pristine grass. This was no mistake. She locked eyes with me. Oh, that smug Karen-level eye contact tilted her chin up like she was royalty and waved me off like I was the intruder. Can you imagine? Before I could even open my mouth to protest, she was gone. Her ATV's roar fading into the distance, leaving my lawn looking like a war zone. The very next day, she was back. Same time, same attitude, same destruction. This time, I wasn't having it. I marched out to my porch, waving my arms like an air traffic controller, trying to flag her down. Did she stop? She revved that engine louder, staring at me like I was a speed bump in her way. Hey! I shouted, my voice barely cutting through the noise. Why are you on my property? She scoffed, like I'd asked the dumbest question in the world. This is an HOA-maintained trail, she declared, her voice dripping with certainty. I have every right to be here, I blinked, stunned. What? I'm not even in the HOA. She waved a dismissive hand, her nails glinting in the sunlight. That doesn't matter. All paths in this neighborhood are under HOA jurisdiction. I stood there, mouth half open, wondering if I'd woken up in an alternate universe. That's not how property law works. But before I could argue, she gunned the throttle and sped off, the ATV's roar swallowing my words. Weeks went by, and her rides became a daily torture session. Morning? Check. Afternoon? Yup. Sometimes even at night when the headlights of her ATV sliced through the darkness like a horror movie. No matter how many times I begged her to stop, she had an excuse locked and loaded. The HOA rules say I can, she'd snap. Or, this land's always been open for community use. My absolute favorite, you're just jealous because you don't have an ATV. Jealous of her neon nightmare machine? It was like arguing with a toddler who'd memorized a script. A loud, entitled ATV driving toddler. Then came the day Karma decided to step in. It had poured rain the night before, turning my yard into a muddy mess. Karen, oblivious as ever, came barreling through at full speed until her ATV hit a slick patch of mud and sank with a glorious squelching thud. Oh, the sight! There she was, her oversized helmet wobbling like a bobblehead, flailing her arms like she was auditioning for a slapstick comedy. She tried yanking the ATV free, but it wasn't budging. When she spotted me watching from my porch, sipping my coffee with a grin, she lost it. "This is your fault," she screamed, pointing a finger at me like I'd personally conjured the mud. I raised an eyebrow. "How's that now?" "You should have put up a sign," she barked. "A sign? What? Like, don't drive your ATV through my private property?" "Exactly," she snapped. I folded my arms, barely holding back a laugh. "You already know this is my land." Her face turned the color of a ripe tomato. She huffed, stomped her foot like a cartoon villain, and demanded I help push her ATV out. Help her? After months of this nonsense? "Pass," I said coolly. She whipped out her phone, muttering about reporting me to the HOA. I couldn't help but chuckle. Go for it, they don't own my property. She made a big show of pretending to dial, then stormed off on foot, leaving her precious ATV stuck in the mud like a monument to her bad decisions. For a hot second, I considered calling a tow company just to watch her squirm when the bill arrived. But nah, letting her stew in her own mess felt like sweeter justice. Sure enough, hours later, she came trudging back, dragging her poor husband along. The guy looked like he'd aged a decade since their wedding day, his shoulders slumped, his eyes screaming, "Why me?" Without a word to me, he helped her wrestle the ATV free while she yapped about how people in this neighborhood have no respect. Respect? Oh, the irony. That was the last straw. I decided to take matters into my own hands and visit the HOA myself. Maybe they could put a leash on their rogue sheriff. The HOA office was a cramped little building near the neighborhood entrance, filled with the faint smell of stale coffee and regret. Inside, a few board members sat around a table, shuffling papers and pretending to be busy. When I laid out the situation, Karen, her ATV, my ruined lawn, they exchanged awkward glances like I'd just dropped a live grenade in their lap. One guy, Chad, cleared his throat. "Yeah, we can't really do much about her." I frowned. "She's trespassing on my property." A woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else sighed heavily. "She does this to everyone." "We've warned her, but she just doesn't listen. So that's it?" I asked, my voice rising. "You're just letting her run wild?" Chad shrugged. "She's persistent." "Persistent? Persistent?" That's like calling a hurricane breezy. As I left, Chad jogged after me, lowering his voice like we were in a spy movie. "Listen," he said, "if you want her off your back, you've got to play her game." I squinted at him. What's that supposed to mean? She thinks HOA rules are her shield, but they're not. Push back hard enough, and she'll trip over her own nonsense. His words stuck with me, buzzing in my brain as I sat on my porch that night, listening to the distant rumble of Karen's ATV. If she wanted to play by HOA rules, maybe it was time I turned those rules against her. The next morning, right on cue, the ATV roared to life, carving fresh tracks through my yard. But this time, I wasn't just standing there, fuming. I had a plan. If Karen thought she could claim my land as an HOA trail, then surely I had every right to follow her on her so-called public path, right? Grabbing my phone, I hit record and marched after her, ready to flip the script. The second she spotted me trailing her on foot, her reaction was pure gold. Her helmeted head whipped around, her eyes bugging out behind those ridiculous oversized sunglasses. For a split second, she looked like a deer in headlights. Then, like she'd flipped a switch, she slammed on the brakes, nearly tipping the ATV over, and screeched, "You're trespassing!" I stopped dead in my tracks, jaw dropping. "I'm what?" "You can't be here!" she shrieked, jabbing a manicured finger at me like she was summoning lightning. "This is private property." I almost choked on my own laughter. "You mean my private property?" She crossed her arms, nostrils flaring like a dragon. "It's an HOA pathway, and you're harassing me." Oh, this was too good. "So it's private now?" I asked, keeping my voice calm but sharp. "Because 10 seconds ago you swore it was a public trail." Her face went crimson. "That's different." "How?" I pressed, stepping closer. She fumbled for her phone, sputtering, "I'm calling the cops." Was she serious? Was she really about to call 911 and cry about being followed by the guy whose land she'd been trashing? Spoiler, yup, she was. Within 10 minutes, a patrol car rolled up and 2 officers stepped out, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Karen launched into a performance that could have won her an Oscar for drama. She flailed her arms, painted me as a crazed stalker who'd been hiding in the bushes, chasing her like some unhinged lunatic. I let her talk, let her spin her wild tale, knowing the truth was on my side. When the officers finally turned to me, I didn't say a word, just held up my phone and played the footage. Day after day, Karen's ATV tearing through my yard, ripping up grass, leaving chaos in her wake. The officers watched, their expressions shifting from boredom to disbelief. The older officer let out a long sigh. "MAAM, he said, turning to Karen. "Is this your property?" She hesitated, then nodded with the confidence of someone who believes lying is a personality trait. "Yes," the officer blinked. "So you own his land?" "Well, not technically, but the HOA." The younger officer cut her off, his patience visibly thinning. "MAAM, the HOA doesn't own private residences." "But the rules say I can," she insisted, her voice hitting a pitch that could shatter glass. "The rules don't override property deeds," the officer shot back. Karen's mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish flopping on dry land. Then she switched gears. "Well, he was following me. That's harassment." The older officer scratched his head, glancing at my video again. "MAAM, he was walking on his own land. You, on the other hand, were driving through it on an ATV." Karen scoffed, throwing her hands up. "That's not the point!" The officer turned to me, his voice calm but firm. "Would you like to press charges for trespassing?" I paused, savoring the moment. Karen's face twisted into a mask of panic, her eyes darting like she was calculating an escape route. Watching her squirm was almost enough. Almost. "No," I said at last, "but I will be filing a complaint with the HOA." Karen looked like she was about to combust, her hands clenched into fists, her helmet still wobbling precariously. The officers gave her a stern warning to stay off my property, and as they drove away, I could have sworn I saw her husband in the distance, shaking his head like he was ready to move to another planet. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no, Karen wasn't done. A week later, I got a letter from her lawyer, yes. A lawyer claiming I'd endangered her by harassing her on her designated trail. I laughed so hard I nearly cried. Designated trail? Was she for real? I forwarded the letter to my own attorney, who couldn't stop chuckling as he drafted a response. Meanwhile, Karen kept up her ATV rides, though she steered clear of my property for a while. Then, in a twist no one saw coming, she tried to sneak through at dawn, thinking I wouldn't notice. Big mistake. She hit a hidden patch of mud, and her ATV flipped, landing in a ditch with a spectacular crash. No injuries, thank goodness, but the ATV was toast, and Karen's pride shattered. The HOA finally stepped in, issuing her a fine for reckless behavior and banning her from using ATVs in the neighborhood. Her meltdown at the next HOA meeting was the stuff of legends, screaming, crying, accusing everyone of a conspiracy against her. I didn't attend, but the neighborhood group chat was buzzing with videos and memes for weeks. As for me, I got my yard fixed, put up a no trespassing sign just for kicks, and enjoyed the sweet, sweet sound of silence every morning. Moral of the story? Don't mess with a guy who knows his property lines and has a phone camera ready to roll. Can you imagine the sweet, fleeting taste of victory when the cops finally drive off, leaving Karen, the neighborhood's self-appointed dictator, speechless for once? No shouting, no wild accusations, just her fuming in silence as she slinks away. Oh, what a glorious moment. But don't be fooled, this saga's far from over. Later that very day, my phone pinged with a message from Chad, that HOA board member who's been my unexpected ally. He sent a link to an online forum where Karen had unleashed her latest scheme, rallying the neighborhood like she's leading a revolution. She's calling me a dangerous stalker, begging people to sign a petition to boot me out of the community. Can you believe it? Not a single soul signed it, not even her poor, defeated husband. Oh, the humiliation. Feeling like I just dodged a bullet, I decided it was time to fight fire with fire. If Karen thought she could weaponize the HOA, then I'd turn their own rules against her. I dove headfirst into the HOA regulations, poring over every mind-numbing page, and jackpot. I struck gold. Karen, the queen of rule enforcing tyranny, was breaking the rules herself. Her shed, 2 feet over the allowed property line. Her tacky garden gnomes, way outside the neighborhood's approved aesthetic. And the cherry on top? Her precious neon pink ATV wasn't even registered with the HOA, a violation that could slap her with massive fines. Armed with this delicious ammunition, I fired off a formal complaint to the HOA board. Their response was lightning fast. Within days, Karen was drowning in violation notices, each one carrying a hefty fine. Was she furious? Oh, you bet. But for once, the rules she loved to wield like a sledgehammer were smashing down on her. The next time I saw her, she was stomping around her yard like a toddler in a tantrum, yanking those hideous gnomes out of the dirt one by one. Her face was a storm cloud when she spotted me lounging on my porch, sipping lemonade and soaking in the show. Enjoying this? She snarled, her voice dripping with venom. I flashed her a grin. Actually, yeah, a little. I mean, who wouldn't? She stormed inside, slamming her door so hard I swear the windows rattled. For the first time in weeks, my property was blissfully free of her ATV's roar. No tire tracks, no clouds of dust, just peace. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't the type to wave a white flag. Oh no, she was plotting something. Wasn't she always? A few days passed, and the silence was almost eerie. No ATVs tearing through my yard. No Karen screaming like she's auditioning for a reality show. It was too quiet, like the calm before a storm. I kept my guard up, knowing she wasn't done. And sure enough, one evening while I was flipping burgers on my grill, I caught sight of her pacing near the edge of my property. No ATV this time, probably because the HOA had banned it, but she was definitely up to no good. Then, like a villain in a bad cartoon, she whipped out a hammer and started pounding a wooden sign into the ground. I strolled over, spatula still in hand, and read it, "No trespassing. Private HOA way." I burst out laughing. Could she be serious? You really think a homemade sign rewrites property laws? I asked, barely containing my amusement. She spun around, arms crossed, her face a mask of defiance. It's official. The HOA said so. Oh, really? I shot back, pulling out my phone. Because they just ruled you were the one trespassing. Want me to forward you the letter? Her face twitched like she'd been zapped. Without a word, she ripped the sign out of the ground and stormed off, her pride dragging behind her like a deflated balloon. You'd think that would have been the end of it, right? But Karen? She's like a bad horror movie villain, always coming back for one more scare. The next day, things escalated to a whole new level of absurd. Chad shot me a cryptic text. You might want to show up for the HOA meeting tonight. My gut told me trouble was brewing, so I headed to the community park where the monthly meeting was held. I don't usually bother with these things, but when I walked in, there was Karen standing before a small crowd like she was delivering the State of the Union. She was waving a stack of papers, her voice booming with righteous fury. This neighborhood has standards, she declared. Certain people are dragging down our property values. I frowned. Was she talking about me? Oh, she was. As many of you know, she went on, her tone dripping with drama. We've had issues with trespassing and harassment. I've been personally stalked and targeted in my own neighborhood. I raised an eyebrow, stepping forward. You mean on my property? I asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. She ignored me, barreling on with her one-woman show. That's why I'm submitting this petition to have problem homeowners removed from our community. The crowd went silent. No one clapped. Most people looked like they'd rather be at the dentist than listening to her. Chad raised a hand, his voice calm but skeptical. Karen, what do you mean by removed? She lifted her chin, all haughty confidence. People who disrupt the peace should be forced to sell their homes. I blinked, stunned. You want to evict me from my own house, the house I own, because you got fined? Her face turned beet red. You were aggressive, she snapped. I walked behind you, I said flatly. You followed me. On my property. Her mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. Chad snatched the petition from her hands and flipped through it, his eyebrows shooting up. Karen, there are 0 signatures on this. Her jaw clenched. That's because people are scared. Of what? Someone muttered from the crowd. A guy grilling burgers on his own deck? The crowd snickered, and Karen's face went from red to purple. She realized she'd lost the room. With as much dignity as she could scrape together, she grabbed her papers, muttered something about corruption, and stormed out, her heels clicking furiously. The HOA members turned to me, and an older woman named Linda let out a long sigh. We've been trying to deal with her for years, she said. Chad nodded. She's filed more complaints than every other homeowner combined. And how many were legit? I asked, curious. Linda chuckled. Not a single one. Right then, the board took a vote. Karen was slapped with HOA probation any more rule breaking, and she'd face even steeper fines, including for any sneaky ATV joyrides. Oh, how the mighty had fallen. You'd think that would have been the knockout punch, but Karen, she's nothing if not stubborn. A few weeks went by, and life felt almost normal. No roaring ATVs, no Karen screaming about her rights, no HOA meetings turning into her personal soapbox. It was peaceful too peaceful. Then one morning, a city zoning official showed up at my door, clipboard in hand. Are you aware of a zoning complaint filed against your property? He asked. I blinked, caught off guard. What? He handed me a notice. Someone claims your property line extends onto HOA-maintained land. I nearly laughed out loud. Let me guess, Karen? The official sighed, his face saying he'd heard this song before. I can't disclose that, but you're not the first in this neighborhood to get a complaint like this. I shook my head, already pulling out my property deed. This is my land, and I've got the paperwork to prove it. Then this'll be quick, he said, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Sure enough, after a quick review, he confirmed my property was exactly where it should be. The complaint was pure nonsense. But then plot twist. Funny thing, he said, flipping through his documents. It looks like her property is actually in violation. I frowned. Come again? He tapped his clipboard. Her fence and shed? They're 2 feet onto public land. I stared at him, my jaw dropping. You're telling me Karen, the same woman who's been preaching about rules and property lines for months, has been breaking zoning laws this whole time? Yup, he said, a hint of a smile breaking through. I had to bite my lip to keep from cackling. A few days later, another city official rolled up to Karen's house with a notice. Her options? Pay to move her fence and shed onto her own property or face a massive fine. Did she comply? Of course not. This is Karen we're talking about. Instead, she tried arguing with the city, insisting the rules didn't apply to her. Shocker, it didn't work. Within 2 weeks, she was hit with thousands in fines, plus extra penalties for ignoring the first notice. The neighborhood gossip mill went into overdrive. The once terrifying HOA Karen was now the biggest rule breaker around. Her rage? Absolutely volcanic. The day she finally caved and had her fence torn down, I watched from my porch, sipping coffee and savoring every second. She was a whirlwind of fury, barking at the workers moving her shed, her face redder than a fire truck. When she caught me watching, she froze, her eyes blazing. "Happy now?" she snapped. I raised my mug in a mock toast. "Ecstatic!" I called back. If looks could kill, I'd be 6 feet under. For the next few weeks, Karen tried to act like she still ruled the roost. She avoided me like the plague, but the neighborhood had turned on her. Even her HOA allies wanted nothing to do with her. Then, one day, I saw a for sale sign planted in her front yard. Just like that, she was done. Whether it was the crushing fines, the public humiliation, or the fact that no one bought her nonsense anymore, Karen had finally met her match. Within a month, she was gone. Her house empty, her ATV a distant memory. The HOA threw a neighborhood barbecue soon after, not officially to celebrate her exit, but the timing, suspiciously perfect. Chad clinked his beer against mine, a grin spreading across his face. "Neighborhood's been a lot quieter lately, huh?" he said. I laughed. Peace had returned, and it felt so good. But just when I thought life was back to normal, a moving truck rumbled into Karen's old driveway. A woman stepped out, stretching and eyeing the house. She caught me watching and waved. I strolled over to say hi. "Hey, welcome to the neighborhood," I said. She smiled, warm and friendly. "Thanks. I just moved in. My name's Karen." I froze, my heart skipping a beat. "Another Karen? Was the universe playing a cruel joke?" She laughed, reading my face. "Don't worry, not that kind of Karen," I exhaled, chuckling. "Good to know. You got an ATV?" She shook her head, still laughing. "Nope, just a dog and some plants. Thank goodness. Maybe this Karen would bring peace instead of chaos." One could only hope.